From Mother Russia comes MorphX, or MorphX, I'm not exactly sure, though you probably never heard of it either way. It's a budget-priced action-adventure set in post-apocalyptic Moscow, like the infinitely better Metro 2033, after a bunch of aliens done took over the world. To be honest, this isn't a terrible game, especially when you factor in the budget price, despite some asshole on the message board I just read's proclamation that MorphX is the worst game ever. As per usual, I'm ranting and raving here. Let's just say that it's my feeling, having played MorphX, that it's a fairly decent diversion if your standards are a little lax and you, like me, can actually find yourself enjoying games that aren't AAA standard. I don't need to play Gears of War or Halo or Call of Duty 24/7 to have fun with a controller in my hands, and I don't need bleeding-edge graphics and sound or even a coherent storyline I take into consideration when I review a game. But this is a budget game with some neat ideas that handles smoothly and offers a few elements of fun buried deep within its overall mediocrity, but not awfulness. First things first, your character in MorphX awakens in an alien breeding ground with no memory of his past, like virtually every other game protag we've seen. But just because amnesia promises moments of self-discovery and plot revelations, don't expect any of that. I dare say beyond the aliens take over the world motif the game puts on display, the game's plot probably doesn't even make sense in its native Russian. One moment you're killing aliens right alongside humans, the next the humans are shooting at you for some confounding reason. The plot is moronic at best, poorly acted by its voiceovers, and piss poorly presented, aside from an okay rendered cinematic at the beginning of the game. Warning, if you're a plot gamer, avoid this one already. Hell, even Quantum Theory told a better tale despite making not a lick of sense just because it was so blissfully surreal. The plot of MorphX doesn't even have that going for it. It's too bad, too, because the basic idea behind MorphX is a good one. How much of your humanity would you sacrifice to save the world? That central theme could have been a contender, but it doesn't play out in any sort of way that's truly interesting. It does make for the game's strongest gameplay conceit, however, in that by collecting biomass, you are able to take your character's inevitable mutations in several varying directions that you yourself have a direct hand in. Delay damage or increase your character's overall health. These choices and many more await and represents the game's biggest and brightest feature. Other than these customization options, this is an old-school third-person shooter whose engine bears an uncanny resemblance to the one used in The Suffering on last-generation consoles. Yeah, the graphics are dated but colorful. Lighting effects are nice, despite an overall darkness that too often makes you rely on your alien eye night vision mutation, but I digress. The game doesn't look bad, just behind the times. And if you're expecting it to conform to more modern third-person game conventions like taking cover and blind firing at your opponents, drop those expectations now. This is a run-and-gun shooter the likes of which predated Gears of War and even Kill Switch. And honestly, I prefer that any day of the week to a third-rate ripoff like the aforementioned Quantum Theory, which, while okay, completely lacked an identity of its own. But speaking of lacking an identity, MorphX unfortunately falls into this trap a few times itself by offering badly designed, generic, and vaguely Geiger-esque aliens to kill in droves. One wishes these off-world creatures had more personality, but instead make you long for the diverse group of foes presented in games like Half-Life, or even the less than diverse but still personality-charged gang from Halo. These baddies aren't scary, they aren't cool, and I really feel like an opportunity was lost to provide them with anything except the most generic video game villain traits, like cloaking and shielding attributes. But hey, at least there's a giant one, that's almost cool. At least until you face it again at the end of the game and as a boss and realize it'd be a pussy if it didn't have so much backup. The depth of MorphX's customization options is what really makes the game worthwhile despite very functional but uninspired gameplay mechanics. Mission objectives and puzzle-based elements can be obtuse to a point of annoyance. The music sounds like an 80s album most of the time. And third-person action is generally about spamming melee buttons or blazing away at your enemies while standing in the open with no concern for tactics. This game just oozes a retro vibe that I can't honestly say I minded, but by not even trying to keep up the pace with more current games, it deserves its inevitable place in obscurity.